Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Dalmar, together with my co-host Mark Fronich of Statewide News Service, JPSTechValley.com, and now the columnist for the Jewish Press.
Well, it's the column's called Albany Beat, and we talk about in the column how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. But Rabbi, you see all this cake here. Well, maybe not, but we do have.
Take your name away from it.
We do have cake
Pick
here,
that up.
And the cake is because we just taped our 200th episode of the Jewish View within 18 months, and it's very proud of that moment. It's a historic occasion. We have with us today, our guest is Assemblyman Tom Abinanti from Westchester County, Greenburgh, and Mount Pleasant. And it's a pleasure to have you as a return guest. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Nice to see both of you again.
And you could join in with our simcha.
Sure.
Mark knows that I'm on a diet, though.
No.
Me too.
Seafood diet. You seafood and you eat it. So
That's right.
All right, here you go.
One of the things in Albany is there's all different types of food. So today there are some days when we have absolutely no food, and there are other days like today when we had the Democrats got together and had a luncheon to discuss some issues. And then one of our legislators celebrated her birthday.
Who's that?
And there were ribs, and that was Barbara Clark.
Oh, well, there were ribs.
And they had ribs and all kinds of other great food. And now you're having cake. I mean, we really,
It's hard to be on a diet when you're in a
and I'm supposed to go join some other legislators at a meatball palooza.
Oh.
So when you come to Albany, you bring together everyone with every different style.
culture, every type of eating, and all that. So I'm glad that you could join us for this Mazel Tov.
That's very good. Very good.
So I'm glad that.
Mazel tov, right.
Yeah, thank
See,
you.
a kosher cake now.
Right, there we go.
That's part of the...
So, Assemblyman Abinanti.
Right.
Let's get down to business.
The party's over now.
Now it's time to talk, right?
Yeah.
You chaired the Assembly Committee on Libraries and Education Technology. And is that something you were appointed to this year?
Yes.
So what are you doing? Did your committee meet?
Yes, this is my my first committee. I'm in my fifth year, beginning of my third term. I'm very pleased that the Speaker decided to give me a committee chairmanship. I think I'm the only one from my class who was given a chairmanship this year. I don't know if I still have chocolate all over me.
You're good.
I'm okay?
You're good.
Is this Assembly, just a technicality, Assemblyman Speaker Silver?
No, Heastie.
Before he didn't give the...
It was Carl Heastie who gave you the chairmanship.
It was Carl Heastie, right.
Right. When he was reshuffling all the chairmanships.
Right.
All right, so I didn't know.
Speaker Silver didn't fill any of the vacancies. He left it for the next Speaker, Carl Heastie.
Just wanted to be sure we got that point. Okay.
So right now that's important because I'm part of the Heastie team. And that's really what it is. I mean, the Speaker has to put together a team of people that he has confidence in. He kept in place just about all of the previous chairs, so that there was not that much disruption with the change of administrations. But there was a vacancy for library chair. It's kind of an entry-level position. It doesn't meet every week. We don't have a lot of bills. But to a lot of people in the state, it really is an important committee and an important activity. I mean, libraries are community centers today. They're not just books. They have computers. They have rooms where people come together, whether it's senior citizens or kids.
Or TV shows.
Or TV shows, right. We're in one right now, that's right.
Yes, yeah.
But that's the point. That's what libraries are all about. And we took on a couple of challenges, and were fortunately successful. Some of the downstate libraries that were in the MTA, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority district, were paying the MTA tax, the employer tax, and we managed to spring them out of that and make them equal to the other municipal governments that weren't paying that tax. We did add $5 million to the budget, which is woefully too little.
Spread out throughout the state.
Throughout the state.
In the Senate, we always say Mr. Libraries is Hugh Farley, our
Right.
senator from Schenectady. So are you getting along with Senator Farley?
Oh, very definitely, very definitely.
What's he like?
He is a very nice gentleman. His staff is very helpful and cooperative. In fact, I met with a member of his staff today and some people from the Office of General Services to see if we can resolve a little problem that arose. For about 11 years, there was a contract in place, so the libraries wouldn't have to do their own purchasing. They could purchase through a state contract. It's lapsed, and there seemed to have been a little bit of a delay in getting a new contract, so we met with OGS, we met with a representative from Farley's office,
So
and
you
we worked it all out.
So you didn't send the representative from your office. You went
I went myself,
personally,
yes.
but
My-
Senator Farley sent the representative.
Yes, well,
so
that's, you
this
know.
is the seniority thing. I mean, what is this going on?
No, I'm hands-on. I'm hands-on, and
Okay.
he's got 2 committee chairmanships over there, and he's kind of busy. And the Senate is a much smaller place, so they have a lot of things that they have to deal with, where we will break up things into
Right.
2 or 3 people. They're
Okay.
1/3 the size of us, and so their senators have much more responsibility. But I'm pleased to be part of the leadership team.
Oh, good.
And I think we're moving forward. We're moving forward. Like I said, we've accomplished some things for libraries.
One of the things that, I love Library here. They're doing us such a great favor by having our TV show and then also in Bethlehem. So we owe them, they do more for us than they
Right.
probably do for 99% of the population. On the other hand, just to throw it out, people are just saying because everything is online and e-books, that maybe libraries aren't so needed anymore as they once were.
What they are now doing is all of that. It's not just books. There are a lot of people who want to see books and want to read. But I traveled back and forth from Westchester to Albany,
Capital, yeah.
and I listened to a book. It's not even on tape. It's on my cell phone. Because I was able to go to I went to the library, and they showed me how to reach their page and how to download, take out from the library in effect, download a book that I'm reading. Happens to be Elizabeth Warren, and about the challenges that she has faced.
And you listened to her
And
read her book?
And I listened to her read her book for 2 hours from Westchester
Oh, I'm
to
so
Albany.
sorry to hear that.
And it keeps me awake. It's interesting, it keeps me awake. But that's what the library is doing. So they're doing what Amazon does or what those other big companies do. And they're also doing what Barnes & Noble does. They have the books there. They're doing whatever you could want. It's a community center.
They have to expand. The library has
Yes.
been expanded, and maybe when I was kids, even though I always say I'm 29 years old, but it just was just simply books. But now they're expanding their
They also are a
services.
place where they're teaching people how to use computers and providing computers, because those of us in the middle class, you think, well, everybody's got a computer, but that's not true. There are a lot of kids out there, a lot of seniors out there who either don't have computers or don't know how to use them. And so they provide internet access.
Okay.
They're providing consulting services for people who are applying for jobs, how to make up a resume.
Well, taxes too, I understand.
I think in some places they're actually doing that. They're providing advice on how to do your taxes. They can't give tax advice.
All these ways of trying to get people through the door.
Right.
And
Well, it's
it's,
getting
you
people
know-
through the door, but it's also providing a friendly environment within the community. Because many people are afraid to approach a business person
Do
to
you
help them
have
with this.
security guards in the libraries in Westchester?
No, we do not.
Because we have security guards at the Albany Public Library main branch and the Arbor Hill West Hill branch and some others that we need to have security guards so in case fights break out.
I think
or
I've
something.
seen them at a couple of libraries, but by and large, we don't have security guards at the libraries.
Okay.
It hasn't been a problem yet.
Hasn't gotten to
fortunately.
that.
Fortunately.
I think the libraries are the great equalizer. I mean, that's what it meant to be because I'm just saying it has resources for everybody, but
Correct.
it's surely for the poor person who can't afford a book and the computer, as you're saying. And
They now also have a system so that you can get just about any book, any tape, any resource that you want because they share. And so you can go into, I was on the, for example, when I was a county legislator, I was on the board of the Supreme Court Library. And that was a repository for all of the records for the Court of Appeals, the highest court, which is in Albany.
of New York State. I mean,
Yes, the highest court of New York State. And one copy of everything that was filed at the Court of Appeals was available in the library in White Plains. So lawyers didn't have to come to Albany. They could go to White Plains.
Which is the county seat.
Which is the county
of
seat.
Westchester County.
Right. And so, this sharing, we're way ahead of all of the people, all of the politicians who are saying we should share. The libraries have been doing it for years.
Right. So you are also on the Assembly Health Committee.
Yes.
And I understand that we have late-breaking news in the sense that the Assembly passed universal health care.
Yes,
bill.
we passed a bill that's sponsored by the chair of the committee.
Dick Gottfried, who we had on our show.
Right, which would set up a new system in New York of universal health care, and it would basically replace the hodgepodge of insurance plans and other ways of paying for insurance. It wouldn't affect healthcare directly. It's dealing with the financing of healthcare. And hopefully, by simplifying the financing, we would make healthcare available to everyone.
But isn't that what Obamacare does already?
This was gonna
In a
ask
way it
also.
does. In a way it does.
So why do we need to replicate?
But Obamacare, and I consider that some people consider that a pejorative term. I think that's complimentary to the president. This is an accomplishment.
Well, that's why I said it in your presence.
Right, thank you. Thank you. No, but it builds on the existing system of using insurance companies.
Right.
And we have in this country probably hundreds of thousands of people employed by insurance companies whose job it is to prevent people from getting health care. They are looking to see how can we save money. Do you really need that
Operation.
that operation
Or
or
that
that process,
pharmacy.
right, or that pharmacy or whatever? And so you put people through. They jump through hoops to get something that a doctor told them they should do. And I hear it over and over again from people that my doctor said I should do this. He said I need this operation, and the insurance company won't pay for it.
Yeah, I know my sister's a doctor. She says, don't even say the word insurance companies to me. I mean, they have a full-time person in their office, and they call it fighting with the insurance companies.
Exactly.
I mean, you need a full-time person. You know, you need
Right.
it. You need it. You should have
So
it.
what Obamacare does, it makes sure that everyone has a financial plan, access to some kind of an insurance company. But that doesn't necessarily mean access to health care. And so the Gottfried plan would remove one of the impediments to people getting health care. It would set up a uniform system. You know, let's look, we already have one. It's called Medicare.
Right.
And it works. It works
So
beautifully.
why do we need this?
Because we should extend that. So we should include Medicare, extend Medicare to include everyone. But at the federal level, they're not willing to
How
do
much
that.
does this Gottfried bill cost taxpayers?
The Gottfried has estimated that it would save some I think it's $45 million
That's
a
saved,
year.
not cost.
Right, he would save money, and over 10 years, we could save $45 billion.
You know, it's
And
a
so,
nice few dollars.
yes, it is. And what you're also doing is you're eliminating all of the efforts that have to be made to root out Medicaid fraud. Because if somebody is going to get health care one way or another, there's no need to try to game the system. And if a doctor is
except
going to
just for
get
the fun
paid,
of it.
if a doctor is going to get paid one way or another, then it's unlikely they're going to try to game the Medicaid system, because now you've got Medicaid rolled into this, and everybody's getting the incentive for people to game the system is because they can't get something. Doctors are not being fairly paid under Medicaid, for example.
So what's the opposition arguing? Because this isn't carried in the Senate, right?
There is a bill in the Senate, but I don't think it's moving anywhere at the moment. I think the opposition basically is the old profit motive. The people who are pushing this are the ones who are benefiting by the present system. I mean, let's face it, the insurance companies make millions of dollars for their stockholders, and if they're not for profits, they make it for the people who work there, who are the presidents of the company, who get paid millions of dollars to head these big companies.
Right.
And
So what was the arguments against this on the floor of the Assembly?
basically that, well, one, it wasn't good enough, which I thought was a little, disingenuous. And also they were talking about, well, we're going to lay off all these people who work for insurance companies. It's going to cost us jobs. I look at this and I say, you know what? If you're going to improve the healthcare system, the jobs will come back in a different fashion. And I'm not as concerned about those jobs where people are spending their lives stopping other people from getting health care. If they're that good, if they're that astute, we'll find a way for them to work. Let's put them to work getting people health care.
Did you get up and speak on it?
I did not speak for it. There was enough debate, and we didn't need to go any longer. And if I got up to speak, I never would have gotten here this evening.
That's it. Okay.
I would have been. It would be tomorrow morning.
So it's still been debated.
So,
okay.
But I think it's probably not going to pass this year. It doesn't look like it's going to go through the Senate. But every time we take a step like this, we educate the public that there are better ways to do what we're doing. Better ways to do it. We don't have to be stuck with the system that we have.
The Assemblyman Gottfried, in his news release, he said it was a historic vote and it makes a truly achievable goal. This vote makes the outcome a truly achievable
Right, because
goal.
we passed it with a pretty large vote in the Assembly. I think it was close to like 89 votes.
So basically, he was saying up until now, up until the proof of this vote, it was doubtful.
Correct.
And
And now people came around and were convinced by the discussion, and so we got a significant majority voting in favor of it. And we heard the arguments; they were not at all convincing. The arguments against it, they were not convincing. And so we should move forward.
And did you have a conversation with Senator Flanagan about
Personally,
this?
no, I did
You
not. I
don't
don't.
this is not one of your. I mean, because you're on the health committee.
I'm
but
on
it's
the
not
health
one of-
committee. I'm very supportive, but I leave that to the to
Chair.
Godfrey to talk
Okay.
to him and the speaker to talk to him.
What's a big issue for you besides the libraries? What's a big issue for you this year?
I'm very concerned about people with special needs. I think.
Well, your son has autism.
My son has autism, but there's a whole host of people out there who have some type of special need, one or another. Last summer, for example, we had an intern who came in, worked in my assembly office. He had Asperger's, which is a very high level of autism, and very bright kid. He had won the science fair in his school. He was that bright.
Yeah, sure.
But he had a problem. He couldn't. He doesn't have the social graces. He doesn't have the understanding of other people.
So he fit in with your office?
He fit in with our office perfectly, right? Yes.
All right.
But in conversing with him, I found out that he had sent his science project down to the MTA. His science project was a high-level computer program that he had developed to speed up some of the trains on the subway cars on some of the New York City.
Want to do that.
No, you want to move them along. No, but what New York
Based
City
on the Westchester experience.
Yeah,
with
on the
Amtrak.
Westchester experience, right? No, New York City basically has express trains and local trains.
Yes.
He came out with a way to have a combination of both, to have something in between, where it was called a skip stop. So you can go a couple of locals, skip a few stops, and be express for a short period of time, and then come. Now that's highly sophisticated because you got to avoid the expresses, you got to avoid the locals,
Accidents.
you avoid all this. But he sent it down to the MTA.
Yes.
Never got an answer.
Okay.
When I heard about this, I came across some of the leadership of the MTA, and I said, "You don't answer your mail? I mean, this kid sends you this." So they went and looked for it.
Yeah.
And they were so impressed with it, they gave the kid a summer job.
Uh-huh.
And he apparently worked out so well that they've offered him a permanent job
Well,
at
you
the
see,
MTA.
this is another place you don't need social graces either.
Exactly, at the MTA. But the point I'm making is
Yes.
there are so many people out there with so many talents
Yes.
that just don't have the abilities to move and maneuver in our system.
Yeah.
And if we could just give them a little bit of help,
Right.
rather than sitting at home doing nothing,
You're right.
here's a person who's going to contribute to the betterment of the MTA, to the betterment of the public, and pay some taxes.
Okay.
And so how could you, but this is the kind of
So
thing
that's
we're not
wonderful.
doing.
Right.
Assemblyman, I totally agree with you, but how do you legislate helping people? And it's fine.
You don't.
I
You set up
totally
a
agree.
system so that state government is helping people. Rather than cutting the services, rather than taking money away, you've got to recognize that sometimes you have to spend money to make money. And here's a perfect example of it. It's not our job to be the social services department. There should be people out there, and at times there are people out there, who will identify someone like this and help them. But on our last budget, we cut $30 million out of the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. Now the governor closed down, or was planning to close down, some of these large, obscene facilities, which have you remember the Willowbrooks of the world, and he wants to close the rest of them down, and I applaud that. But you can't then take that $60 million of savings and move it to the Public Works Department or to some other department or take it as tax savings. You got to take that $60 million and roll it back into services for people.
Okay.
And so instead of doing that, he put $30 million into services for people and took the other $30 million as savings. We were already shortchanging people,
Okay.
and we needed to have that money. And so that's the kind of thing that I'm fighting for. That's just an example of what we could be doing.
So I have two thoughts. One, I understand your connection with the MTA because you're on the Corporations, Authorities, and
Right,
Commissions
that's-
Committee, so they fall under that
Yes.
under that auspice. The other thing is you have a district that's very interested and holds education to be really high on, but you're not on the education committee because that's a really, high level. You have to
Well,
be
it's
more
also a question of
seniority.
scheduling, and everybody wants to be on the education
Okay,
committee.
so let
we have
me
a whole
ask you-
series of people from Westchester already on the education
Okay.
committee. I'm on the codes committee, which
Right.
is one
So
of the senior committees,
It
which
is,
I'm
and
very
health
pleased
is
with.
also, yes.
Yes, and so is
So
health.
let me ask you this. What do you think of the new education commissioner, Mary Ellen Ilya, and her problems that she had in Hillsborough, which is in the Tampa area, or is it too soon to ask you about her?
I've read her background. I'm looking forward to meeting her. That she was unanimously affirmed by the new Board of Regents is a good sign. Her background is promising. I'm willing to wait to see what
Okay.
happens. There are some reports that she had some difficulty in a difficult school district.
Well, but she was there 10 years, and
Exactly.
she said that most superintendents survive 4 years.
Right.
And she lived to tell about it after 10.
After 10.
And it was the last year that was most difficult. So she...
As I said, I think she's promising.
But she
We'll wait
had
and
that
see.
personality issue with the people. I mean, the board that got rid of her, the school board that got rid of her, was not the school board that put her in.
Right.
So she was very sort of defensive. When we had her at a news conference and asked
Well,
her.
I think it remains to be seen. She's working with a different group of people.
Yeah.
She's working with a very high-powered group of people now. The regents who are there are not wallflowers. They're not shrinking violets. They are an aggressive group. Many of them have been in education for quite some time. This is a new Board of Regents.
Now,
This is not the Board of Regents that we had several years ago.
Well, the regent that represented your area was from your assembly
Yes.
district, and he retired at age, 90 or something?
80. Harry Phillips decided it was time to go back.
I think he was 88. I think he was more
You-
than
you
80.
may be correct.
I think he was close to 90. He's
You
88.
may be correct.
And then
We put in Judith Johnson,
Judith Johnson.
who
So you're
was
happy
a
with her?
superintendent of Mount Vernon, of Peekskill. She worked in White Plains. She worked in Mamaroneck. So she had a good, broad experience. And she seems to be very, very knowledgeable.
Okay. So are you happy with her? Is she-
So far, I think she's doing wonderfully. We'll see. Ask me in 5 years, and I'll let you know as we
All
look
right.
back.
Well, we'll both be here.
But again,
hopefully.
we have high hopes for her. She's very knowledgeable. She's not afraid to speak her mind.
But you're optimistic about the future for the state education department?
I'm
and-
hopeful that this
Just
Board
to-
of Regents
can I
will
just
turn it
ask
around.
the civic, she doesn't have to be confirmed from the senator or the assembly?
She's chosen by the Assembly. The process for choosing the Board of Regents, this is the one time when the
No,
Assembly
I think
gets
he's
to
talking
select.
about the commissioner.
Well,
Oh,
this
the
also-
commissioner.
But this is important also. I mean, just fill out for the
The Board of
viewers how the
Regents,
system
the
works.
Board of Regents are chosen. They have 5-year terms, and they're chosen by the Assembly. It's the only time that the Assembly actually gets to name someone.
Well, I
The
think
Senate usually has the confirmation powers.
But
the-
there is a
the
joint
commissioner-
session. It is a joint session of the legislature, technically, that
Technically,
that
yes.
votes for the
He's correct.
the Board of Regents. So
Except the senators always say it's the Assembly choice because there's more Assembly members than there are
and there are more
senators.
Democrats total, and you include the Senate, the Assembly,
Correct.
and the Senate Democrats, than there are Republicans in the Assembly and the Senate. However, the senators say we have a district that's more than twice the size of the Assembly district, so we should have a weighted vote, and shouldn't just be one vote each. It
The
should be a
Assembly is the
weighted vote.
people's house, and we're much closer to the people. And so I think we reflect
So
the...
those are the dynamics.
That's the dynamic,
Yeah.
yes, no question about it.
Okay.
But in answer to your question, the Commissioner of Education is chosen by the Board of Regents.
And doesn't need any confirmation
Doesn't need
from
any
the
confirmation
legislature.
from anyone.
The governor, or the governor
The
doesn't have a
governor
hand in
actually
it,
has nothing to do
with it.
with the
No,
education
but
department.
the audience may not know that.
Right. The governor has nothing to do with it except his power through the budget. He can control
Right.
the budget that gets submitted to the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's his influence on it.
Okay.
So, but long time ago, whenever they set the Board of Regents up and put it in the Constitution of the State of New York, the concept was to remove education from politics.
Right.
Now, life is all about politics, whether you call it partisan politics or business politics or whatever. But there was an attempt to remove it from the everyday politics of a place like Albany and give it to this board that was supposed to be a group of educators. And I think we're getting back to the concept of
Yeah,
educators
it
on the
came
Board
out
of
of
Regents.
Columbia University, I believe Columbia College, and then they, in the late 1700s, I think it was 1795 or whatever. But let me just move on because we have a few minutes, and I know you don't want to talk about this, but we're going to talk about it anyway. The Education Investment Tax Credit. Now, the governor renamed it, but that's basically, just the same thing. It's just retitling it. I forgot what he titled it.
The concept is
parental choice or something.
It's the concept is to give tax breaks.
So those who are religious and don't like pro-choice, he's saying parental choice,
Right.
and so
I hadn't thought of that.
That
puts people in a very interesting situation to be for choice but not for choice. Right?
That's right.
I think for your viewers, we should explain what this is all about. The governor first made a proposal, which had been floating around for quite some time, if I'm not mistaken, to give a tax credit. That's the word I'm looking for, yes. Mm-hmm. A tax credit for what used to be a tax deduction. Mm-hmm. Today, when the average person makes a contribution to their local synagogue, to their church, to their favorite not-for-profit organization, to their local school, mm-hmm. they can deduct it. I guess it's Schedule A on your tax return. And you get to, and it's worth a certain amount because if you're in a 8% tax bracket, well then it's going to be worth, as you're subtracting it, maybe worth a portion of 8%. This would make it a tax credit. With a tax credit, it's dollar for dollar. So if at the end of your tax return, you come down to owing $1,000,
right,
but you have a tax credit for $2,000, mm-hmm. if it's a refundable tax credit, you wipe out your taxes and the state sends you a check for $1,000. So the governor here was proposing $100 million worth of tax credits mm-hmm. if the monies were donated to educational institutions or foundations that supported educational institutions. My objection to it is, first, the way it's designed. The maximum contribution that you could make under the governor's proposal was $1 million. And under the governor's proposal, you would get 75% of that as a tax credit. The other $250,000 you could still take off as a deduction, which means that you're getting more than 75% back, depending on your tax category. Okay. But if you're going to make $1 million contribution, you're probably up there, with several $1 million of income every year. So this is worth a lot of money to you. And what you're doing basically is you're directing the money. It's a self-directed program because you're saying,
so what's wrong
I
with
like
that?
your school, and I'm going to give $1 million to your school, but in the end, it's not really your money you're giving the state money. Because you're getting 75% back from the state, and you're taking some more off. Plus, there's a federal tax credit, tax deduction. And when you do the math, at a year later, when you file, you're making more money than you put in. So you're using taxpayer money to support an
individual school. Would you like to see a pot there,
well,
like a lockbox?
Let me finish. The Senate made it even worse.
That's why I'm asking.
The Senate made it 90%. Rather than 75%. There are arguments on both sides. To start with, I don't think this ought to be a tax break for the rich. If you want to talk about this type of concept, it ought to be for parents who are paying for their own kids' education, and they ought to get a tax credit for what they would normally be paying, rather than this being a wealthy investors who maybe own a charter school and now can make $1 million contribution to their own charter school and have the government pay for it. So that's because, number one, you're allowing wealthy people to direct money. Number two, you're taking money away from the legislature. We have a lot of schools that desperately need money, but we don't have the money to give them.
So you want to make sure that these millionaires give the money to the most needy schools as well as the ones that they want to.
But the millionaires are not giving money. They're giving state money.
But that would help in terms of your support.
I would just cut the millionaires out, and I would talk about everyday normal people.
So
give them some help in what they pay for. Well, I think that's something we'd have to talk about. But secondly, I'm very concerned about the concept of allowing taxpayers to direct taxpayer money to the institution of their choice. Because what's going to happen here is you're going to have those with money who are going to understand this concept, and they're going to be helping the wealthier schools, while your inner city schools are not going to have people who are going to be thinking about them. And we're going to further the inequality rather than diminish the inequality. So the concept itself, I think, is faulty. I'm willing to talk about it like we are here, and I've had that conversation with a lot of people. But right now, we don't even have a plan on the table that cuts the millionaires out. What we have right now is really a tax gimmick so that millionaires, people at the top, can direct taxpayer money to the schools of their choice.
Okay, but like many other things, can't this go through the way it is and then sort of tweak it later on and amend it? And you know this happens.
You mean after we spend $150 million a year for 10 years and have millionaires
but you don't do it
make
for 10
money?
years. You don't do it for 10 years. I mean, you pass something and then you amend it the next year or the next year, and you kind of...
My feeling is we should do it right the first time.
Well, but there's so little that gets done right the first time at the legislature.
Just because you made mistakes before doesn't mean you should intend to make new mistakes.
But this is what happened, even with the SAFE Act bill. You know, they had to amend it later, but
what happened with the SAFE Act
I don't want to get into the whole
we
issue.
rushed it. We rushed it. The governor
Right.
insisted on passage of that bill
Right,
within a very
understand.
short period of time.
I understand.
Well, if we had taken the time to discuss it and do it right, we wouldn't have had those issues.
Okay. Okay, so we're taking our time, we're doing it. Is your prediction that EITC will go through this year? Or
I
not?
don't think it's going to go through this year. I
Okay.
think that that nobody is willing to remove the rich people from this, because I think this is coming from the Wall Street investors
Okay.
who are trying to find a way
So let me tell you-
to direct the money to their charter schools.
So let me tell you the nuclear option that's going on from the private school side, is that they want to now enroll their 250,000 students in the public schools, and for September, which will throw the schism of all the enrollment numbers off the table,
See.
so that you'll have to provide a seat for these 250,000 students, even if they don't show up in September.
Let me start off by saying that I went to Immaculate Heart of Mary Elementary School, Xaverian High School, Fordham College, and
Okay.
NYU Law School.
Okay.
All private schools.
Uh-huh.
So I appreciate the importance of private schools in our system. But I also believe that when there's a shortage of money, the obligation of the state is to pay for state education and to provide a
Right.
seat for every child who wants one.
Well,
but people are still going to choose to go to private schools for other reasons, whether it's for religious reasons, for ethics
Yes,
reasons, or for whatever
but
their
you're missing
motivation
my
is.
point. I mean, you're stating your point, but
Right.
I'm just telling you what the nuclear option is. And then imagine in the Westchester schools, you got to have, whether it's prefab or it's others, enlarged buildings, or somehow you're going to have all
I think our schools
these.
would welcome more kids with open arms. We have very good schools. Some of our
But
schools
you don't
actually
have,
have
the
a
seats.
small.
You have overcrowding in your school.
No, I think we'll accommodate them, and I think that's the attitude that we have to take, that we will accommodate people, and that there is a separation of church and state. There's a separation of private schools from public schools. You see, because what we're hearing is the need for money for certain of the Catholic and the Jewish schools, and I recognize that. But what we're talking about is a plan that'll funnel money to some of the prep schools, that'll funnel money to charter schools. I don't think in the end very much money under these plans that we're hearing will end up going to the Catholic schools or the Jewish schools. It's gonna go to the fancy schools that have big investors now and have big foundations now, because they're going to be equipped to be able to take care of this gimmick that's being set up. And those schools that are our neighborhood schools, whether it's an Immaculate Heart of Mary or whether it's a Solomon Schechter in Westchester County, they're not equipped to take advantage of this fancy gimmick that's being set up to help the Wall Street investors.
This is so important. I need to ask you, we're way over time, but I need to ask you, has the Orthodox Union or Agudath Israel of America come to your office and met with you to discuss this with you?
I think they met with my staff.
Okay, see, you're so hands-on that this one you'll let your staff, because you're not in agreement with it. Okay.
No, I've actually met with people on this, and just this afternoon. And in fact, I got a visit from the superintendent of the Catholic schools in New York City today, and I missed him, and I called him back. while he was driving back to the city, we had this conversation. And what I'm
He
telling
didn't
you is
drive off the
exactly what
road?
he didn't drive
No,
off the
okay.
road. And what I said to him was exactly what I said to you, is I recognize the need for these schools. Because I went to them myself.
Sure you did.
And they provide a very good education.
Well, I can see the product.
But I feel that my obligation
Yes.
is to first of all take care of our public schools.
Yes, I've heard that argument.
And when you take a look in my district, for example, some of the best schools in the state are in my district. They get 10% of their budget paid for by the state.
Okay.
That's a mere 10%. And the taxpayers are screaming and saying, don't you dare give money anywhere else until you give us some more money to pay for our schools. Our property taxes are way too high, and we need to have more state support. And how dare you even consider having money be directed somewhere else
Now
where people go voluntarily? Because we've got to pay for these schools, they're in our communities, and we've got to pay for them.
And you know part of this bill has money going to the public schools.
Only if it gets directed that way.
Right.
And the definition of public school is so broad that it includes charter schools.
Okay.
Because charter schools are also under the definition of, quote,
Right.
public school.
Okay. Anything else you want to mention, ma'am?
I appreciate the opportunity
Okay.
to have this discussion. I look forward to
Great.
coming
We
back
should
and
have- we should have
having this
started
again.
it earlier in the show.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
sorry.
we'll have to
but-
come again. Assemblyman, you're doing
But
good
thank
work.
you very much.
and
Much success.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
much.
for being
Thanks.
here.